Hello everyone. We're really excited to meet you all here as part of this Extensions 101 webinar series that has been scheduled for the year 2025. So as Divya had mentioned, this series was initiated last year where we had conducted around 12 sessions which briefed on extension development to different Zoho products using the Zoho developer platform Sigma. Considering that that series had a good reach and the developers had found the resources useful, we have planned a continuation of that series this year as well. So this year we planned yet another 10 sessions where we'll be covering more features and capabilities that are available in the platform to help you build efficient extensions for the Zoho products. Also, we'll be covering it for Zoho Projects, CRM, Books, and Desk. So across these 10 sessions, we'll be exploring extension development for these four products only. We'll be kickstarting with Zoho Projects, followed by CRM, then Books, and finally Desk. So with that said, let's get into the session for today. So before I enter into the agenda for today's session, let me quickly introduce myself and my teammate. So I'm Nandita and I'm from the Zoho Marketplace team. I also have Vinod with me, who's from the Marketplace team as well. We also have Praveen with us from the Zoho Projects team. So all three of us will be available throughout the session to address your queries. You can feel free to reach out the chat window and drop your queries at any point of time, and the team will help you get the query resolved. Also, I'll ensure to take some pauses between the topics during the session. So if you have any queries at that time also, you can go ahead and ask them out. So let me get into the agenda for today's session. So we'll be starting off with a quick overview on the basics, which is what are extensions, what is Zoho Developer, and what is Zoho Marketplace. So once we get an idea on the basics, we'll be moving into creating and testing an extension for Zoho Projects, followed by publishing and sharing an extension for Zoho Projects. Then we'll be exploring two major features which are available in the platform called as connections and widgets, which will help you to build efficient extension for Zoho Projects. Finally, we'll conclude with an example use case demonstration of building a Zoho Projects extension, where we'll be utilizing these two features, connections and widgets. So this is the agenda that's planned for today. We believe most of you all would have attended the earlier Extensions 101 webinar series. For those of you all who have not attended it also, it's not a problem because we'll be starting with an overview on the basics. So once you get a gist on these concepts, you'll be able to smoothly transition into the remaining topics in today's session. So let me start with the first topic, which is what are extensions? So extensions are nothing but installable plugins or add-ons that help you to enhance the existing functionality of your Zoho product. So say if your business has a requirement to enhance the feature of a Zoho product by either extending the native feature of the product itself or by integrating it with a third-party application, then in that case, extensions would be your ideal solution. So we all know that every Zoho product has a defined set of capabilities by default, right? But what if your organization or your business has some custom requirements that extend the defined functionality of the Zoho product? Then in that case, you can go ahead and build those custom requirements or customizations as an extension. And that extension can be shared across with your organization users so that they can install it and use those functionalities as part of their Zoho product. So as I mentioned, you can go ahead and develop the customizations that you require together as an extension. That extension can be bundled and published to get an installable plugin. So installable plugin is like an installation URL. That installation URL can be shared across with the users whom you want to use your extension functionalities. So the users can go ahead, install and use those extension functionalities as part of their Zoho product, thereby enhancing the existing functionality of the Zoho product. So the major benefit that we see over here is that all the customizations that you require are bundled together as a single extension, and this extension can be shared across with any number of Zoho product users. So all these users can go ahead, install the extension as part of their Zoho account, thereby enhancing and having these customizations reflected in their Zoho account as well. So this is a basic overview on what extensions are. So the immediate query that you would have in mind is how can you build these extensions, right? So at Zoho, we have the Zoho developer platform using which you can build different types of applications. So there are also multiple sections inside the Zoho developer platform itself, namely Sigma, Vertical Solutions, Creator, API Integration, and Catalyst, each of which will help you to build a different type of application. So since our focus in this series is going to be building extensions for different Zoho products, the Sigma platform, which is available inside Zoho Developer, is exclusively meant for building extensions. So that's the platform that we'll be exploring across these 10 sessions. So we now have an idea on what extensions are and the support that is available at Zoho's end to build these extensions. Next, let's quickly see the different types or the different ways in which you can publish these extensions that you have developed. So once you develop an extension using this Zoho developer platform Sigma, depending on your business needs, you can choose to publish the extension either privately or publicly. So there might be scenarios where you're building the extension, that is, you're building these customizations for an internal organization or business requirement alone. Then in that case, you'll have to share this extension with your organization users only, right? So in cases where you want to share your extension with a defined set of users, then you can go ahead and publish your extension privately. Once you publish the extension privately, you'll get a private installation URL. This URL can be shared across with your organization users who can then go ahead, install and use those functionalities as part of their Zoho product. So this is in the case where you want to share your extension with a defined set of users. Then you can publish it privately. There might be scenarios where you want to make your extension visible and accessible to a larger scale of audience. So in that case, you can go ahead and publish your extension publicly. So when you publish the extension publicly, it's going to be made to all visible to all the Zoho users. So those Zoho users can go ahead, access and install your extension as part of their Zoho products. So while you're publishing the extension publicly, there are two ways in which it can be done. One, you can list it as a free extension or you can list it as a paid extension. So if it's going to be free, then the Zoho users can access and install your extension freely as part of their Zoho product account. If it's going to be paid, then the end user, that is the Zoho user, will have to make a payment in order to install and use the extension functionalities as part of their Zoho product. So in this way, as an extension developer, you monetize via the extension that you build as well. So while I mentioned that you can publish your extension publicly, and when you publish it publicly, it will be made visible to all the Zoho users. You might have the question as to where it will be visible to all the Zoho users, right? So that's where Zoho Marketplace plays a vital role. So this Zoho Marketplace is like an online business store where you can find all the applications that are developed using the Zoho developer platform. So once you develop an extension using the Sigma platform and you publish it publicly, then that extension will be sent to our marketplace approval team for review. Once the approval team evaluates your extension and upon successful validation, they will go ahead and list your extension in Zoho Marketplace. So from Zoho Marketplace, it will be visible to all the Zoho users who can go ahead, access and install the extension as part of their Zoho product. So as I mentioned earlier, depending on the mode in which you have listed, like if it's free or paid, if it's free, they can just simply access the extension from Marketplace, install it and use it as part of their Zoho product. If it's going to be paid, they'll have to make a payment in order to access and install the extension as part of their Zoho product. So this way they monetize via the extension as well. So this was a summary on what extensions are, what Zoho Developer is, and what Zoho Marketplace is. So as a conclusion, let's see how these three components play a role together in an ecosystem. So these extensions can be built by Zoho developers using the Zoho developer platform Sigma. So the extensions that are built using the Zoho developer platform Sigma can be listed publicly in Zoho Marketplace, from where the Zoho users can install and use the extensions as part of their Zoho product, thereby enhancing the existing functionality of that Zoho product. So we've now seen what extensions are, the support available to build the extension, and the support available to list these extensions publicly. So now that we have an overview on these three concepts, that is on the basics, we'll next be moving into the next topic in our session, which is creating an extension for Zoho projects. So as we saw earlier, the support available at Zoho's end to build or create an extension is the Zoho developer platform, right? So we're going to be accessing the Zoho developer platform and going to start creating an extension for Zoho projects. So let me access our Zoho developer URL. So here I'm able to view this access Zoho developer button. So since I've already signed in to Zoho with my credentials, I'm able to view this button. If you do not have a Zoho account, or if you're not logged in with your Zoho credentials, please ensure to sign up for a Zoho account and log in with your credentials in order to view this Access Zoho Developer button. So let me now click this Access Zoho Developer button, which will redirect me to my Zoho Developer homepage. So I'm going to click on this button. So this is our Zoho developer homepage where you can see the different sections that we've mentioned earlier are available. So each of these sections inside Zoho developer will help you to build a different type of application. So our focus is going to be building extensions for Zoho products, and this Sigma platform is exclusively meant for that. So we're going to be accessing Sigma and we're going to start building our extension. So in order to access Sigma, let's click on the Start Building button available in the Sigma section. Once I click on the Start Building button, I'm prompted to choose my workspace. So let me choose my workspace. So this has taken me to my Sigma workspace page where I can go ahead and start creating new extensions. So since I've already created multiple extensions, all those extensions are displayed over here. Our goal is to create a new extension for Zoho projects, right? So let's do that by using this new extension button, which is displayed here. So I'm going to click on this button. As soon as I click on this button, I'll be prompted to enter the details for the extension that we're going to be creating. So let's provide a name for the extension first. Followed by a description for the extension. So this description is nothing but a brief on the functionality that the extension is going to perform. So let me just give a sample description for now. So after you provide a name and a description for the extension, you have to choose the service for which you're building the extension. So we are going to build the extension for Zoho Projects. So I've chosen the service as Zoho Projects over here. After which you can see that there's an option to toggle between yes or no to upload an existing file. So while you're building an extension for Zoho Projects, there are two different ways in which it can be done. So it can be done either via Zoho's command line interface, or it can be done via the Sigma Cloud Editor. So if you're building an extension via the Zoho's command line interface, finally you get a zipped file. So that zipped file is what you will upload in this browse section over here. So today we are going to be proceeding with the most widely and commonly used approach, which is the Sigma Cloud Editor approach. So in order to develop your Zoho Projects extension using the Sigma Cloud Editor approach, you're going to toggle no for uploading existing file, then click I agree to the terms and conditions, and then we're going to go ahead and click on the button create. So as soon as we click on create, we'll be taken to the Sigma Cloud Editor space for the extension that was just created. So you can see this is the name for the extension that we provided, and this is the Sigma Cloud Editor space for the extension from where we can proceed with our extension development. So here you can see that by default, the Sigma Cloud Editor provides a directory structure with certain folders and files available in it. In this directory structure, you have a file called as plugin-manifest.json file. So this is the key file which will help you to perform or use any features effectively as part of your extension. So let's say as part of your extension, you're going to be integrating Zoho projects with another application, or you're going to be creating some custom user interfaces, which are widgets. All those key features will have to be configured as part of this plugin manifest file in order for that feature to function efficiently in your extension. So in this plugin manifest file, by default, you can see that a widget, sample widget is automatically created by the Sigma Cloud Editor itself. So a widget with a name as projects extension in the location task tab. So this location is the location where this widgets are user interfaces. So where this user interface is going to be embedded in your Zoho Projects production account. So it's going to be in a task details tab. And this URL key is the key which is going to be the location of the HTML file which is going to render the UI for your widget. So when there's a widget, it ultimately means that a user interface is a widget, right? So for that user interface to be rendered, a code snippet has to be written. So the path of that code is what has to be provided as the value for this URL key over here. So here you can see that the URL is app/index.html. So in our folder structure, inside the app folder, you can see there's a file called as index.html also, which was defaultly created by the Sigma Cloud Editor itself when our extension was created. So this is the sample HTML file, which is going to render the UI for our widget called as projects extension. So in this way, you can create an extension for Zoho projects by accessing Zoho Developer, entering into Sigma, and then start building your extension for Zoho projects using the Sigma Cloud Editor. So we've seen the steps to create an extension for Zoho projects. Next, we'll be moving on to how you can test this extension for Zoho projects. Okay, so we've seen the steps to create the extension, right? So after you create the extension, you can test this extension functionality in a testing portal itself before you publish and install this extension in a Zoho Projects production account. So our ultimate goal once we create the extension is to publish and share it across with users so that they can install it in their Zoho Projects account, right? But before we do the publishing section, you can test your extension functionalities in a testing portal. So that can be done using this run option in your Sigma Cloud Editor. So when you click on this run option, it's asking me to choose my Zoho Projects portal. So since I'm part of multiple portals, I'm choosing my one of my portals. So after I click on this run button, it is taking me to a testing portal where I can go ahead and test this extension functionalities before I publish and install this extension in a Zoho Projects production account. So if you're a part of a single portal alone, as soon as you click on this run button, you'll immediately be redirected to your testing portal. So in the extension, when the extension was created, we saw that by default, there was a sample widget called as projects extension, which is available in the task tab, right? So let's enter into the task module. So inside the task module, let me just enter into any particular task. So these are the different tabs which are available as part of a task. So here you can see that there is a widget called as projects extension, which is now being embedded in the task details tab. So if you click on that, you can see that the UI has been rendered. So this is the UI which is available in the index.html file, which was by default created by the Sigma Cloud Editor. So in this way, we've tested the sample widget which is available in the extension that we've created, if it is working or if it is reflected as part of our testing portal. Similarly, any functionalities that you're creating as part of your extension can be tested in this testing portal before you publish your extension and install it in your Zoho Projects production account. So one key thing that you need to remember when it comes to testing a Zoho Projects extension is that if you're making changes to any of these files in this folder structure, you can just simply save your changes and then refresh this testing portal in order for those changes to be reflected as part of your testing portal. But if you're going to be making any changes to this plugin manifest.json file, so if you're making any configuration changes in this file alone, then you'll have to ensure to stop running your testing portal, save the changes, and then run the testing portal again in order for those configuration changes made in your plugin manifest.json file to be reflected as part of the testing portal. So this is a key pointer that needs to be remembered. So changes made to plugin manifest file, in order for them to be reflected as part of your testing portal, you need to stop running the portal, save your changes and run the testing portal again in order for those configuration changes to be reflected in your testing portal. So in this way, you can go ahead and test the extension that you've created for Zoho projects through a testing portal. So we've seen how we can create our extension and test the extension for Zoho projects, right? So next we're going to see how you can publish this extension and have it shared to other Zoho project portal users. So to do that, you have this extension section available in the left panel, right? So if you click on that, the extensions that you've created will be displayed over here. So this is the extension that we had just created. So in that extension, you can see two icons. One is called as the edit builder and the other is the extension details. So if you click on this edit builder, it will ideally take you to the Sigma Cloud Editor space where you can make changes or edit functionalities for the extension that you're building. The other option or the other icon is called as extensions detail. So when I click on that, it will take me to the general details page for this extension where you can see this publish button. So using this publish button, when I click on publish, it's going to ask you to choose the visibility for your extension. So visibility is nothing but the type in which you want to publish your extension. So we saw that depending on the requirement, you can choose to publish the extension privately or publicly, right? So for our demo purpose, we are going to go ahead with private. And then you also have an option to enable it for multiple DCs. So if you want the extension that you're developing to work across multiple DCs, then you'll have to enable this as yes. We're going to go ahead and proceed with the no option and click on publish. So once you click on publish, you can see that the extension has been published. The UI or the message has been displayed, and then you will get an installation URL. So you remember we said that when we publish an extension privately, you'll get an installation URL. So this is the private installation URL that can be shared across with other users so that they can install and use this extension functionality as part of their Zoho Projects portal. However, when it comes to Zoho Projects, you need to remember one thing. So before you share this installation URL with another portal user, you have to share this entire extension itself with that particular portal. So how can that be done? So you can see that there's a share tab available over here, right? So we'll click on this share tab. Once you click on share, you can see there's an option to share the extension. So when you use that button, it will prompt you to provide the portal name and the admin email address of the portal with whom you want to share this extension. So for a sample, let me just share some portal detail for you here. So I'm providing the portal name and the email address of that particular portal. Okay, so once you provide these details and click on share, this particular user will get an email invite to accept the extension that has been shared with them. So after they accept the invite, they'll get another email with the private installation URL, which is available over here. So using that installation URL, they can go ahead and install this extension as part of their Zoho Projects portal. So once they do that, those customizations that we develop will be reflected as part of their Zoho Projects portal as well. So the thing that we need to remember is that after you publish the extension, you'll have to ensure to share that extension with that portal user. So once you share the extension, they will get an email invite to accept the share extension invite. So after they accept it, they will get another invite with the private installation URL itself, using which they can install the extension as part of their Zoho Projects portal. So far, we've covered the steps to create an extension, test an extension, publish an extension, and share an extension for Zoho projects. So the key or the quick pointers that we need to remember as part of these 4 sections that we've covered is that when it comes to testing your Zoho projects extension, if you're going to be making any changes in the plugin manifest.json file alone, then ensure to stop running your testing portal, save the changes and run the portal again for those configuration changes to be reflected in your testing portal. Similarly, when it comes to sharing the extension, after you publish the extension privately, you'll have to ensure to share that extension with the portal user so that they can go ahead and use the private installation URL to install and use the extension as part of their Zoho Projects portal. Now, let's proceed with the next topic, which are we are going to see two important features which are available in the Sigma platform that will help you to build efficient extensions for Zoho projects. So the first thing is connections. Okay, so just like the name suggests, connections are going to help you to establish an integration between two applications. So when do we need an integration between two applications? So if you want to push or pull data between two applications, then in that case, that connection between those applications has to be secure so that the data can be transferred seamlessly and in a synchronized manner. So this connections feature, which is available in the Sigma platform, is going to help us to achieve the secure link or the secure integration between applications so that you can transfer data between applications in a seamless and a synchronized manner. So how can we use these connections as part of our extension? So we can separate these steps into three different steps. So the first thing is creating a connection in your Sigma platform. So you'll have to first establish a connection in your Sigma platform. As the second step, you'll have to configure the connection that you're creating in the Sigma platform inside your extensions plugin manifest.json file. So after you create the extension in the Sigma platform, it has to be configured inside the extensions plugin manifest.json file, because as we said, any important feature that we use as part of the extension will have to be configured in that extensions plugin manifest.json file. So once that is done, the third step is invoking and utilizing the configured connection as part of your extension functionalities. So now let me take you to the Sigma platform and practically demonstrate how you can create this connection. So I'm going to enter into the Sigma platform. So you can see this connections option available in the left panel, right? So when you click on this connections tab, it's going to ask you to choose the service. So this service is going to be the service for which you're building the extension. So we are building the extension for Zoho Projects, right? So let me choose the service as Zoho Projects. And then you'll have to select the organization. So I'm going to choose the organization is nothing but your Zoho Projects portal. So I'm going to choose my Zoho Projects portal. So once you choose the service and your portal, you can see that there are two options available under services. One is the default service and you have the custom service. So by default, Zoho offers a pre-configured list of services with which you can simply click and create a connection with Zoho projects. So here, this is the service for which you're building the extension. So Zoho projects is going to be the service for which you're building the extension. If you want to connect it with any other application, and if that application is available in this pre-configured list of services, you can simply click that service, provide some basic details, and then go ahead and create a connection with it. So if the application that you want to connect with Zoho projects is not available as part of this pre-configured list, then you can use the custom services option where you can go ahead and register that application that you want to connect with Zoho projects. So once you first register that application, then you can go ahead and create a connection with it. So depending on the application that you're going to be integrating with, if it is available as part of the default services list, simply click and create a connection with it. If it's not available, register that service in custom services and then create a connection for it. So as part of our use case demonstration, which is going to be the last session of the talk of today's session, we'll be integrating Zoho projects with Zoho Desk. So let me now create a connection between Zoho projects and Zoho Desk so that it will be helpful for us to understand better during our use case demonstration. So here we've chosen the service for which we are building the extension. Now we are going to integrate it with Zoho Desk, which means we're going to create a connection for Zoho Desk. So if you're going to be integrating Zoho projects with any other Zoho product itself, then you'll have to choose this Zoho OAuth option available over here. So since we are going to be integrating it with Zoho Desk, we are going to choose this Zoho OAuth option, after which you can click on this create connection button. So as I mentioned, you have to provide some basic details. So let's provide the connection name. We are creating a connection between desk and project, right? So let's provide that connection name. And the connection link name will get automatically populated. After this, you have an option to toggle between yes or no for use credentials of login user. So if you choose this as yes, then when the end user is going to install your extension, if they have to authorize this connection, they'll have to provide their Zoho project credentials. So in order to authorize the connection that you're creating for the extension, the end user will have to provide their credentials upon extension installation if this is yes. If you choose this as no, then as an admin developer who's developing this connection, your credentials alone would be enough for the end user to authorize the connection upon extension installation. So I'm going to keep this as yes, which means the end user, when they're installing the extension, in order to authorize this connection, they'll have to provide their Zoho credentials. So after providing the name and choosing this option, you'll have to choose the scopes. So connections are ideally to transfer data between applications, right? So when data transfer is going to occur, there would be API calls that would be involved. So every API would have a relevant scope related to it, right? So for our use case, we would require two scopes. So let me just choose those scopes now. So I'm just choosing those scopes over here. So after you choose the scopes that are required for your extension functionalities, we are going to go ahead and use this create and connect button. So after you click on this, it will take you through a flow of steps to create this connection. So click on the connect button. So these are the two scopes that I had used as part of our connection. So I've chosen two scopes, right? So I'm going to accept those scopes over here. After which you can see that the connection has been successfully created. So the details that we had provided, like the connection name, the scopes, the service, are all available over here. And the status of the connection that we've created is connected. So along with that, you can see that there's a sample code which is automatically populated, one for Deluge and one for JSON. So if you want to use this particular connection as part of your extension, depending on the place in which you're going to be using, you can use these sample codes. So the first step, which was creating the connection in a Sigma platform, is completed. So we've created a connection between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. Our second step was to configure this connection as part of our extensions plugin manifest file, right? So that's what we're going to see next. So since we are going to use this as part of the plugin manifest.json file, we are going to copy the samples code, which is available under JSON. So you will have this copy to clipboard option. You can just simply click on that and this particular script will be copied. So after you copy that, you're going to go inside your extension. So we are going to visit the extensions tab. So this was the extension which we had created. If you click on the edit builder icon, it will take you to the Sigma Cloud Editor space. So here in the plugin manifest file, you will have to paste the value that you just copied inside this connectors key. So I'm going to go ahead and paste the value that we had just copied and then save the changes. So this was the second step, which is configuring the connection that you created in the Sigma platform inside your extensions plugin manifest file. So if you create the connection in the Sigma platform, it can't be directly used inside your extension. In order to access that as part of your extension, you will have to configure that connection in your plugin manifest file as a value inside this connectors key. So these are the first two steps, which is creating a connection and configuring it in the plugin manifest file. The third step is simply invoking this connection that you've configured just now as part of your extension functionalities. So we might be involving some API calls as part of our extension functionality, right? So when API calls are going to be done, data is going to be transferred, for which the connection needs to be secure. So at that time, along with the API call, we'll be utilizing this connection link name, which is available as part of this script, right? So this connection link name will be used as part of our API calls in order to invoke this connection and perform our extension functionalities. So the last step alone, we'll practically see it while we are doing our example use case demonstration. So these are the steps which are basically needed in order to create a connection and utilize it as part of our extension. So if I just go back to my PPT, with regards to connection, the major points that we need to remember is that after you create the connection in the Sigma platform, you have to configure it in your extensions plugin manifest.json file. And then later, that connection link name which you found in the configuration, right? That's what we'll be utilizing in order to invoke the connection as part of our extension functionalities. So we've seen one of the important features which helps us to build efficient Zoho Projects extension. So the next feature that we're going to see is called as widgets. So we most of us know, right? Widgets are nothing but custom user interfaces. So there might be scenarios where you would like to get an input from the end user, or you might want the end user to make a choice based on which you want to perform some logic in your extensions functionality. Or simply, if you want to provide a simplified user interface for the end user to make the experience for them seamless while they are interacting with your application, in all those scenarios, you can go ahead and build custom user interfaces, which are nothing but widgets. So how can we build and use these widgets as part of our extension? Just like how we saw for connections, we have to first create the widget, which we have to create the widget, which is going to be the UI for our extension, right? So when you're going to build a user interface, you'll have to have the UI and some logic for it. So you'll have to ideally handle your user interface, that is the widget, through HTML and JS code. So after you create that widget, the second step is configuring it as part of your extensions plugin manifest file. So if you remember, while we created an extension, there was a sample widget which is automatically available in the plugin manifest file. So in a similar way, you can create any number of user interfaces that you want, and all those user interfaces will have to be configured as part of your extensions plugin manifest file in order for them to be reflected in your extension functionality. So when it comes to widgets, Zoho Projects itself offers certain JS SDK methods. So let me enter into the documentation. So these are the JS SDKs which are offered or supported by Zoho Projects to handle and manipulate data related to your Zoho Projects account. So let's say Zoho Projects has multiple modules like task, issues, milestones, and so on. So if you want to get some data related to that or set some data to that, then Zoho Projects offers certain JS SDK methods for that. But in order to use these JS SDK methods as part of your widget script, you have to do two mandatory things. So the first thing is including this source URL in your widget script. So if you're going to be using the JS SDK methods as part of your widget script, this JS source URL will have to be included in your script. Similarly, they also have a CSS source URL. So if you're going to be using any style related functionalities as part of your widget script, then you can go ahead and use this source URL in your script as well. So this is the first mandatory thing that needs to be done, including this prerequisite source URL in your script. The second thing is using the init method to initialize your extension. So once you do these two things, including the source URL and initializing your extension, you can then go ahead and use the other JSSDK methods like metadata, context. So here you can see, right, these are the different methods which are available. So you haven't have a method to get. So there are multiple data that you can get using this get JSSDK method. Similarly, you also have the set JSSDK method. So using this, you can set data to your project's module related features. And then you have another important JSSDK method, which is called as request. So as part of your widget, if you're going to be making any API call to another application, then in order to invoke that third-party application's API from your widget, you will have to use this request method. So this is an important JSSDK method, which we'll also be utilizing as part of our use case later, because we are going to be invoking Zoho Desk API calls. So if you're going to be invoking third-party applications API from within your widget script, you'll have to use this request JSSDK method. So the next slide in my PPT, I've just summarized the points that we've just discussed. So in order to use the JSSDK methods offered by Zoho Projects, you'll have to do two mandatory things. One is including the prerequisite source URL in your script, then utilizing the init method to initialize your extension. So once these two things are done, you can go ahead and use the other JSSDK methods. So I mentioned the request method is an important method we'll be utilizing later, right? So I've just briefed a little on that over here. So that method is used to invoke the third-party applications API. And this is the way in which you'll be constructing that request method. So you'll need three important parameters in order to invoke the Zoho projects.request JSSTK method. So the first parameter is a URL, which is going to be the third-party applications API that is going to be invoked. Then you'll have to pass the object. So object is nothing but the data that you require in order to invoke the third-party applications API. So let's say you're going to be pushing some data to the third-party application. In that case, the request type would be post, and you also need to construct the data that you're going to push to the third-party application, right? So all those data will have to be constructed as an object and passed as a second parameter to this request method. Finally, you need to pass the connection link name. So this is where you can utilize this connections link name in order to invoke the connection, make a secure call to the third party applications API to receive a response from the API. So when we were dealing with connections, we saw that in order to invoke and utilize that connection as part of your extension functionalities, you will need to pass the connection link name. So similar when we are looking into widgets, if you're going to be making API calls, then an important parameter to be passed while invoking the third-party application API would be that connection link name through which a secure connection can be established and the API can be hit. So we'll be exploring this widgets concept and the JSSTK methods in detail through our use case demonstration, which we're going to be seeing next. So let me directly enter into our example use case and let me showcase the two concepts that we've seen now, which is connections and widgets as part of it. So the example use case that we've taken for today's demonstration is an integration between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. So let's say as a Zoho Projects agent, you're handling tasks related to development related activities. So as when you're doing any task related to development, you might want to require some data required in as a prerequisite, right, in order to start with your development changes or development activities, right? So in Zoho Desk, we know that there is a module called as knowledge base where multiple articles would be available. So if an agent would require some prerequisite data, they can visit Zoho Desk knowledge base, search for the articles related to the task they are working on, gather data, and then go ahead and proceed with their development related task. But say how convenient it would be if the articles related to the task that they are going to be working on are displayed within the Zoho Projects task tab itself as a widget. So in that case, the agent can simply view the related articles from within the task page that they're working on, gather the data, and then proceed with their development related changes, right? So this will save them manual labor. So they don't have to go to another application, search for data and come back to this application. And also this saves time as well. So this is the use case that we're going to be achieving today. I've just kept a visual representation of the use case that I just mentioned. So an agent who's going to be working on a Zoho Projects task, if the articles related to the task that they're working on can be searched in Zoho Desk knowledge base and then returned and displayed as a widget in the task details tab itself, they can simply view the articles, gather data, and proceed with their changes. So I've taken an image or the sample output for you all to relate better to the use case. So this is the Zoho Projects task, okay? So let's say an agent is working on this developer mode extension related task. So if the articles related to this, which are available in the Zoho Desk knowledge base, can be listed as a widget inside this task details page itself, then they can simply access the article from here, take the required data and proceed with their changes. So in this related articles widget, we are going to display the articles related to this particular task that the agent is going to be working on. So this is our example use case, and we are going to see the components through using which we can achieve this use case as part of our extension. So I've just listed the components which will be majorly required in order to achieve this use case that we just discussed. So there are three major things that we would need. One is a connection. So obviously we are going to be pushing and pulling data between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk, right? So a secure connection has to be established. So we'll be using the connections component. Then we'll be using something called as config variable. So in cases where you want to get an input from the end user during the extension installation, then you can go ahead and use this config variable key in your plugin manifest file. So when the end user is installing the extension, at that time, if you want to prompt them to enter any input value, then that can be done via this config variable. So we are going to be asking the end user to input their Zoho desk organization ID. So we are going to be making the search for the articles in the end user's Zoho desk knowledge base, right? For which we will require their organization ID of Zoho desk. So that is going to be got as an input from the end user upon extension installation using this config key in the plugin manifest file. So we'll be creating a variable called as organization, and we'll be keeping it mandatory because only if the end user provides a Zoho Desk organization ID, a search can be made for the related articles inside their Zoho Desk knowledge base. So that is the second component that we'll be using. And the last component is obviously you need a widget. So we are going to create a widget called as related articles in the project's task details page itself, through which we are going to be invoking the Zoho Desk API to search for the articles related to the project and have them displayed as part of your widget. So you remember, we are in order to invoke any third-party application API as part of your widget, we saw that the project's request JSSTK method is what we'll have to be using. So we'll be using the request method, and in that request method, we'll be invoking the Zoho Desk API to search for articles. So I've just linked that API for you all to get an idea on what data would be required from Zoho Desk end. So it's just loading the article search API. Just a moment. Yeah. So this is the article search API, which we are going to be invoking as part of our widget. So this is the URL. So this will search for the articles related to the data that we will be passing. And then the Zoho Desk also requires certain headers, which is you have to pass the organization ID through in which this particular search has to happen. So this is the API that we'll be invoking using the request JSSTK method in our widget code. So that's what I mentioned over here. The API that we'll be using and how we'll be invoking it in our widget is going to be using this Zoho Projects.request method. So what I've done is that I've set up all these components readily in an extension so that I can showcase that component setup for you all and we can see how the sample output works. So let me just go back to my Sigma platform. So inside my Sigma platform, I've created an extension called a Zoho Projects Display Articles. So this is the extension where I've set up the set up these components ready, and from here only we'll see our sample output as well. So you remember the plugin manifest file is going to be the key file where you can go ahead and configure all the features required for your extensions functionality. So the first thing, the connection between Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. So I have created a connection for Zoho Projects and Zoho Desk. That value, I've pasted it for this connectors key over here. So I've configured the connection in my extensions plugin manifest file. Then we saw that there's a config key in plugin manifest file. So inside this config key, if you want any data to be provided by the end user upon extension installation, then you can define variables inside this config key in plugin manifest.json file. So I've defined the variable as I mentioned earlier. So we're going to get the organization ID from the end user. So that variable is defined inside the config key. Finally, I need a widget as part of my extension, right? So the widget's name is related articles. It's going to be in the location task details tab. So we are going to have it as a tab inside the project's task details page. And this URL is going to be the location of the HTML file, which is going to render the UI for my widget, right? So here inside app folder, I have a file called as index.html where I have written my widget script in order to perform the widget's logical functionality. So we just saw the configuration that was required for our particular use case demonstration, right? So lastly, what we saw is that we are going to be discussing the widget code, which is going to be rendered as part of our related articles tab. So let me go into the index.html file. So if you remember, If we have to use any JSSTK methods as part of our widget code, then you'll have to use two mandatory things. One is including the prerequisite source URL and then initializing your extension. So that's what I've done over here. I've included the requisite method and I've initialized the extension as well. So let me also give you a brief on what are the other JSSTK methods I've used for achieving our use case. So the first JSSTK method I've used is Zoho Projects.metadata. So when we're using the config variable, remember that the end user is going to provide an input for that particular variable upon extension installation. So whatever input the end user is going to provide through this config variable can be retrieved using this Zoho Projects.metadata JSSTK method. So I've used this method to retrieve the org ID value for the Zoho desk that the end user will provide. And I'm going to store that in a variable called as org value. So that's the first JSSTK method I've used over here. Then I've used Zoho Projects.get, where I'm going to get the deployment type, which is nothing but the DC in which the end user is installing the extension. So the end user, so when we are going to be handling API calls, in order for the API call to be redirected to the particular domain, then we have to handle the DC. So in that case, we are going to go ahead and provide Zoho Projects.get deployment type over here, which will return the DC that the end user is going to install the extension in. So I've stored that in a variable called as DC response. I've used the same Zoho Projects.getJSSTK method again, but this time I'm going to get the task.name, which is nothing but the Zoho task that the end user is working on. So we need to search for articles in Zoho Dev's knowledge base related to the task that the Zoho Projects agent is working on, right? So for that, I need the task name of that particular Zoho project task the agent is working on. So that I'm going to get using this Zoho Projects.get task name, and I'm storing that in a variable called as subject over here. So we've got three important details. One is the end user Zoho desk org ID, then the deployment type, and then the task name in which the end user is going to be working on. So using these data that I've got, I'm going to be invoking the Zoho Desk API to search for the articles in the knowledge base. So in order to invoke that API, we are going to be using the Zoho Projects.request method, right? So in this Zoho Projects.request method, if you remember, we mentioned three key parameters are required. One is the URL, which is going to be the URL of our Zoho Desk Applications API. So this is the Zoho Desk API. So the static parameters are constructed as such. And then this DC response is basically the domain in which the end user will be installing the extension. So that I've handled over here. And then finally, I've given the subject, which is going to be the task name. So this API will search for the articles in knowledge base based on the task that the project agent is going to be working on. So the first thing, which is the URL, is constructed. The next thing is the object that is required to invoke this particular API. So what is the object that is required for that? When we saw the API, we saw that the request method for it was get, and there were certain headers that were required from Zoho Desk end, which was the org ID. So we need the end user's Zoho Desk organization ID, right? So that value we've retrieved using the Zoho Projects.metadata JSSTK method in this org value variable. So that is what I'm passing as the value for the org ID key in the headers. So in this way, I've created the object that is required to invoke that API in a variable called as article details, and that articles details object is passed as the second parameter to invoke the request JSSTK method. So finally, we need to pass the connection link name. So the secure connection link name is required, right? So that link name is what we are going to be passing over here. So after you provide that name over here, through using these three parameters, you can go ahead and invoke the request method, which will invoke your third-party applications API to search for the Zoho Desk articles. So after the response is retrieved, that is after if any related articles are available, then all those articles will be returned over here. This final section that I've handled is nothing but just getting the data that is returned, taking the relevant details alone and constructing it in a list format. So if you remember, when we saw the sample output, the data or the articles that are related to this particular task will be displayed as a list to the project agent. So that data construction is what I have handled over here. So this was like an overview on the widget code that we've done. So we've used certain JSSTKs that are required for our code logic and handled that as part of a widget script. So now the configurations that are required for the plugin manifest file and the index.html file are handled. So I'm going to use this run option which we saw earlier over here in order to test the extension functionality. So I'm going to my testing portal over here. So this widget was also included in the task tab of a projects task. So I'm going to this task module over here. So let me enter into a relevant task. So I'm just going inside a task. So here you can see that the widget that we've created in the task details tab has been embedded over here. So when I click on that, if there are any articles related to this particular task in the Zoho Desk knowledge base, then that will be displayed to me here as part of this task details page itself. So from here, the agent can simply view this article. So this will directly redirect them to that particular article in Zoho Desk knowledge base, from where that particular agent can gather any data that they require and then proceed with their development. So in this way, any number of articles related to your task will be displayed over here itself in your task details tab page, which makes it convenient for the agent to directly gather data and proceed with their changes. So as part of this use case example, we've covered those two major concepts that we had seen, which was connections and widgets. So that we wanted to showcase the importance of using connections and widgets as part of our extension. So this was our concept for today, which was creating extensions for Zoho projects and utilizing connections and widgets as part of them.